we are at 3:30 sharp. So thank you for joining our Tuesday mini trainings. I'm gonna have to read all the logistics here. All you know that this training will be recorded and archived, and the presentation will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll follow it with 15 minutes question and answer and discussion. If you would like to make a comment or question, you can post it in the chat, and Brian and Kayla will be looking at that because I cannot see anything other than the PowerPoint and my face. So I don't even know how many people are in. So that's even better for me because I'll get nervous. So if you want to raise your hand or have questions, you can do that after during the discussion time. And if you want to speak during the discussion, you can find the microphone and unmute it. And you can find that in the Zoom toolbar. And the link of the handouts of this presentation will be posted in the chat also. Okay, so let's start. This is a presentation, and I don't know why it's not moving. Okay, why is not moving? Okay, there. Okay, so this, the presentation title is Total Communication Approach. The reason I was asked to do this presentation is because this is the mode of communication that I use with my son when he was here with us. And I got kind of familiar with it. So I'm gonna share my parent perspective about the total communication approach. Okay, so three things that I would like to talk about during this slide is that everyone communicates. Everyone has a need to be engaged with something, and communication happens two ways, receptive and expressive. So everyone has the need to be part of something. So let's that make clear. Everyone communicates some way or another. The reason, and I'll talk about this, like I said, as an experience of as a parent of a child with deaf blindness, in having used this approach with my son. Four of the top reasons that he communicated is in his early years and later on in life, is the top four reasons were to obtain things that he wanted, to refuse things that he didn't want, to engage in social interactions, and to seek information or provide information to the people that were working with him. And so I'm going to focus on that today. Everyone communicates differently. As you know, it's formal communication or symbolic, or non-formal or pre-symbolic. And my son, we're gonna talk about that, use non-formal communication or pre-symbolic with some forms of communication that it's conventional for him. He was conventional for him. So what is total communication approach? According to Sense, it's about finding and using the right communication and communication methods for each person. It is knowing each individual's unique means of communication and see what communication approach works best in order to connect and ensure successful interaction, and supports information exchanges and conversations. So when we saw my son trying to communicate and us trying to communicate with him, it wasn't obvious that he wasn't going to be able to understand spoken words because he was deaf and he was blind and he had other disabilities. We tried to come up with something that was meaningful to him. So we decided to go that route. So we when I said formal communication in the previous slide, we thought, and as a parent, as a person, I thought formal communication was just what we think it is, speech, sign communication, sign language, written, braille, pictures, drawings, voice output boards, and so on and so forth. So we thought that was the communication that we're going to get with my son, and we're going to try working as much as, as we could to have this form of communication be the way he was going to communicate with us. But on the other side, he was more like non-formal communication. He was doing a lot of gestures. He was making sounds, moving, body movements, eye gaze. And when I said eye gaze, we were thinking that he was, looking at something, and nobody's gonna say no to me, because I always thought, even the doctor said he couldn't see anything. I always thought he could. So that's why I put eye gaze, breathing patterns, facial expressions, and behavior. So all this was my son. This non-formal communication examples that I give you here, that was my son. So let's meet my son. Okay, Norman, you can see here different stages of his life. When he was born, as you can see, you couldn't tell that he had any disabilities. The first picture here is when he was about 2.5, 3 months old. And I didn't know back then that he had vision impairments or hearing impairments. He was acting as a typical boy. Even though I started noticing something was different, because I had a daughter prior, before him. So I started like seeing some differences. In the next picture, you see that he was already in the early intervention program, and he was really happy. And he was like trying to show some delays and some, some things that, gave us a lot of information. He was, like I said, getting delay in some areas. And, as he grew older, we started noticing that he had not just his vision and hearing impairments. He had muscle tone disability, or later on in life, we found that he had muscular dystrophy. Back then, we didn't know. So those motor skills were impacted, and as well as his cognitive, function. So it was really hard for us to go step by step with him, and we tried as much as possible see him as a typical kid, and we tried to figure it out what to do, what was best for him. So that this is Norman, and then the rest of the presentation is going to be all about him. The things that we as parents, as a team, did in order to make his life better, to, for him to communicate as much as possible, expressively and receptively. So this is Norman. So in the early days, without guidance, and I said without guidance because I didn't know nothing about any resources. I was doing what a typical parent does. I was anticipating on my needs. I needed to change his diaper, so I was doing like a routine stuff for him. I was like changing his diaper, or feeding him, or singing a song when we were bathing him. So anticipating familiar activities was helping us a lot, because he was always in a state of, he will startle when when we presented a different activity to him. So we had to pay really attention to what his communication was telling us. We interacted through play. We did a lot of cause and effect. So I was like doing what I did with my daughter, and try to imitate what he was receiving from the people that were coming and see him for his therapist. So it was a lot of doing what a parent usually does. not necessarily something that I was thought to do or was given information to do. So I myself, and my family and my husband and my extended family started learning to understand Norman's mode of communication. And I always remember saying, Norman is really easy to understand. Just look at him and he'll tell you what he needs or what he wants or what he doesn't like. So so just pay attention. So I was sharing that information that I thought it was excellent at that time. I was sharing it with others, with his teachers, with his therapists, doctors. I remember because he was seeing a lot of doctors. I always told the doctors, every time you're gonna see him or touch him, just let him know, because I just don't want him to get scared, or startled, if he doesn't know you and you all of a sudden start touching him. So I shared that information that at that time, and I still think it was really valuable. And as we did with other families and friends, every time somebody approached him or got near him, they had to say, this is so and so. And so I was trying to do my home communication with him, and until I finally got introduced to deafblind resources, and I'm talking about maybe 2.5, 3 years old, when he, maybe earlier than that, when I was introduced to other resources, to written material, workshops, DA. And that's when Norman was or I was asked to be part of this research program that it was like for kids with visual and hearing impairments, and that's how I started learning about deaf blindness. And I started learning more about communication, and seeing that the things that I was doing, that's were the things that they were showing at that time, and they were like researching. So I was really, really happy that the things that I was doing, it was working for him. So when I started um, learning more about communication and learning more about deaf blindness, I started, with a lot of concerns. How is my son communicating his wants and needs at school? How are they interpreting everything that he's trying to say? How they anticipated his needs, or how are they handling all the needs that he has throughout the day? It was like really, really scary for me, because I saw this tiny little boy going to school with people that didn't know him and didn't know how to read his communication. So it was, I was like going like like peeking to the classroom. That time, I was allowed to go in the classroom and stay there and help with him. And so I was really concerned that those things were not addressed, and that he was just being cared for, but not necessarily being part of the classroom. I didn't want him to feel isolated. It was a lot of concerns, and I'm sure all the parents, have, many of the time, most of the time, when they let the kids go to school, and they don't have like a form of communication, or they really, and I don't want to talk bad about the programs that he was in, but sometimes you find people that are they just doing their job, but not necessarily putting the heart into it. And you find people that really enjoy working with these kids. So I had the fortunate of having both, having people that like to work with kids with intense needs, or intense need or intensive support needs, or not. It's really something that I was fortunate to have in my life. So I learned both ways. So when I was introduced to all this information on California Deafblind Services, I was uh, at that time I started participating in workshops, in-person workshops, and some satellite, they used to call it satellite trainings, and you know, I was really fortunate to be asked. You know, I was so like always asking questions and trying to participate, so I was asked to be part of the group, of the team. And that's when I started, you know, learning more. And one of the things that I learned is the communication bill of rights. You know, in the chat you'll find the resources, or in the at the end of this PowerPoint you'll find the resources, and one of them is a communication bill of rights. And please read it, and it's really gives you a lot of information on what are the rights for people with disabilities. And I'll read what, you know, this is, and this is from the National Joint Committee for the Communication Needs of Personnel with Severe Disabilities. It says, all people with a disability of any extent or severity have a basic right to and effect through communication the conditions of their existence. Beyond this general right, a number of specific communication rights should be ensured in a daily interactions and interventions involving persons who have severe disabilities. To participate fully in communication interactions, each person has these fundamental communication rights, and it has a whole list of it. So please go ahead and read that when you have time. And I'm sure Kayla or Brian already posted it in the chat. And like I said, have that information. So once I started reading that, more concerns, you know, raised and raised, and you know, and saw, wow, what can I do? What can I do to support my son? So what I did then, and I'm saying this because with the time it went by, it's not necessarily, you know, when he was 4 or 5, you know, at the time went by and I started, you know, learning more about it. I was, you know, and he participated in all this research projects, and, you know, getting all this, lots of information. I, you know, came across it. I was introduced to the communication matrix, and I'm sure most of you guys have heard of it, but it was like an eye-opening for me. You know, this is a great tool for assessing communication with kids with severe disabilities or severe needs. And involves 4 major parts of communication, you know, and it's, you know, I'll show this in a very minimum information that I can put. I know it's a lot of information, but just to give you like an overview of it, it involves 4 major aspects of communication. 4 of the earliest reasons of communicating, and these are the 4 that I told you at the beginning. It's to refuse information, to refuse the things that we don't want, to obtain the things that we want, to engage in social interactions, and to seek or provide information. So those are the earliest reasons for communicating. So the kids, and I'm talking kids like Norman, those are the main reasons they want to communicate. You know, if they don't feel good, or, you know, they don't want something, or they want to be part of a group, or, you know, they want to give you information. So those are the 4 main reasons. And also, you know, another aspect, you get the 7 levels of communication, and this is where it starts getting more and more meaty because, you know, I knew that he was communicating in, you know, in different levels, but not necessarily this information so so specific. You know, when I started reading it, and I'll go in more detail in the next slide. So the 4 specific messages that someone expresses, and the 9 categories of the behavior someone uses to communicate. So all these 4 Norman was using. Norman had, you know, I was using with Norman, but I didn't know this was already organized in this communication matrix. So it was exciting for me to see that. It was exciting for me to see that I was doing something that I didn't know existed already. So I was really happy that someone had the idea to put it and organize it. So let's so that I already went on and set up the 4 reasons to communicate. It's to refuse, to obtain, to engage in social interaction or to provide and seek information. And the 7 levels of communications are the pre-intentional behavior. It's the behavior that is not in our control. You know, they just, you know, let you know what is the state they're in, if they're hungry, of if they are not feeling well, or they're, you know, discomfort or comfort. So this is pre-intentional. They really don't know what it's going on. They just, you know, tell you how they feel. And the intentional behavior is when you are more in control, that you do something and you get something. So that's more um, it's still pre-symbolic, but it's intentional. They're starting to learn that if I do something, that I'll get something. The unconventional behavior, it doesn't involve any symbols or any concrete symbols, and it's not socially um, acceptable. You know, it's just the pulling and the, you know, and the doing something, you know, those behaviors that are not socially acceptable. And then the conventional behaviors is still the pre-symbolic, and it's more like, you know, saying bye or nodding your head, yes or no, and things like are more acceptable. And that's where my son started, like, you know, as we went by, and try to organize this information, I that's when I started. Okay, so Norman he already went from 1 to 4, and then I think he's between 4 and 5. So we started like looking concrete symbols as, you know, the things that they look like or they feel like. Norman knew exactly if we give him the spoon for food, he knew it was right in his mouth, or, you know, if I give him the can of milk, he right away knew that it was for drinking, or his cup, he knew exactly that it was for drinking. So, or the diaper. So those were more concrete symbols for him. The abstract and language is more advanced. So I'm not going to go into that because I didn't get to experience that with him. So this is that's that 24 specific messages, as you can see in this slide. And this is, I took this from the actual matrix. And you can see on the left, it says the level from the 1 to 7. And then the four reasons of communication. So as you can see here, the level 1 expresses discomfort, and to obtain expresses comfort, to social express interest in other people. So as you can see, these are the 24 specific messages that the people express when they're communicating. So this is what the communication matrix says. And the next is the behavior category. You know, levels 1, 2, and 3. It's, you know, the body movements, the early sounds, facial expressions, and the same thing. It's by levels in the category of the behavior. Norman, I think went from body movements, early sounds, facial expressions, you know, the visual. He usually turned maybe to the sound or you know, some vision that he might have had, and simple gestures, vocalization. Sometimes, you know, when I, you know, he was like sitting and I was going by him, he'll, you know, make a sound to call me. So he will do that. He also used concrete symbols. Like I said, he used representations of objects for activities. So it was really nice to see that we were using this matrix before, you know, we were introduced to that. So I was really surprised and happy at the same time. Okay, so once I heard, and my family worked on that, and we were really enthusiastic and finding more information about Norman. And as a parent we try to and I'm not going to say that you need to do that, but as a parent I wanted to assess Norman like quite often to see if there were changes. So we did a lot of action planning and with the school and with the programs, and it was definitely a bumpy road. Like I said, I was so fortunate enough that have people in my life that wanted to work with Norman, and some people that didn't want to work with Norman much. But we learned a lot from those people. So we had a lot of team meetings, try to incorporate the information that we gather, in finding more and more resources. I have to be honest, I was the one who brought the information to the school district or to the people that was working with him, because I don't know, I was just like, if I bring it, they will not say no. So I had that in my head, and so I was the one who provided the most information. I'm sure they found some too, but most of the time it was me bringing the information to them. We assess Norman as a group, by completing the communication matrix at home and communication matrix in school. So it was two that we completed, and we compared it and see what it was different. So we did that, and after doing that, we did communication goals. We were make sure that it was expressive and receptive were included in both, in the IEP goals. And we had a lot of school and home communication and collaboration. I remember doing a communication notebook that it was going back and forth from school and from home, to share information that it was happening at home, and then they will share information that it was coming from the school, so we can be in the same page. And it was working. We had to write at that time. I think by that time when we created that communication note book, we didn't have texting much. I think it was like really the early years when we have cell phones. So we had to write things. And we reassessed Norman once the goals were met. Like I said, as a parent, I wanted to get information, and I wanted Norman to move from one step to the next. So it was like my dream that Norman will move, from one communication to another level, and going up and up and up more. So that's why it wasn't happening much, because I was doing it quite often, but still, I had a dream, and it was happening, I guess. So working as a team with more informed, it was a more informed collaboration. We had lots of information. We had created the communication matrix. We assessed Norman, and so we had information. And like I said, by that time years passed, and and things were working. Some other kids weren't working. Norman had some medical issues, so he regressed. So it was a battle, but it was as the time went by, we were more informed, I should say. So we work on expressive communication by honoring what Norman was telling us, and we were responsive to what he was telling us. So I was really, really worried that the school was following what we were doing at home. So that's why we had to work as a team, and we were like receptive communication. It was like letting him know that who we are and what we're there for, and it's not just like come and work with him without letting him know. We anticipated activities through cues. We use a lot of cues with Norman, with like object cues, touch cues, because, we had to provide all the information necessary for him. It was not getting through his ears or through his vision, but he had a very good touch, and he was really aware of his body, and so we did a lot of anticipation. We did a lot of routines with him, because we believe that routines make the things more structure. So we like in the morning we had a routine that getting up and going to if we bathe them during the school school days, or so we had like a schedule already, and that was really good for him, because it was he knew exactly what was coming. Like after school he will, right after the bus, he will get in the house and go to his bed, and then we had this routine to play 15 minutes or 20 minutes after school, and then he'll take a nap. So he was like really really accustomed to that, and that worked for him. We provided him with a lot of choice making, because as he graduated from like early levels of communication, we tried to go higher and higher. So it was a time that he wanted to make a choice. Like, what do you want? Do you want to drink like juice from a juice box, or his milk from a can, or water? So it was like making choices. Or do you want to play with this object, or play with this other object? So a lot of choice making. Try to integrate Norman on that. A lot of hand under hand with Norman, because like I said, his motor skills were really limited. So he needed that support. He needed that hand under hand to let him know that, he was able to do stuff, and he didn't want to do it, he can, retract from that. So give him that opportunity, give him that respect, on that. If he didn't want to do an activity, he will let us know with that, with that behavior, or just removing his hand from my hand. We'll make sure that, as you can see in the pictures that I showed you, he was very social. So that's one of our priorities too, that he will be part of a social group, where he was integrated in a group. So every time in the school, when they had like lunchtime or recess, he will be part of this little group, with in the general ed, or with typical kids, or kids in his classroom. So he will always be part of, not left alone, and that's included. And moving forward from once the goal was met, not necessarily keeping the same goal all the time. So we had to move and advance. So this is an example of the communication matrix results that we did with Norman. As you can see, for the activity, we for the eat, we showed him the spoon, and we signed ASL eat, or say the spoken word. English is my second language. We speak Spanish at home, so we did both eat and comer, which is eat for Spanish for eat. And we showed him the picture. So these are, the things that we came up. This is an example of it. We had a long list. As a parent, we tried to do a lot of things. So, one of his favorite things was the school bus. I would show him the seatbelt and the buckle, and the home sign lift. So home sign, not ASL, but lift, and show him the and tell him the bus, and he'll love that, because he loved lift. For his birthday, they give him like 3 times, back, up and down, and he was so happy. So that was his treat every day for going to school. So this is an example of the communication matrix, and I am finishing with that. I think I'm on 4 minutes past my 4 o'clock. So do we have any questions, Brian or Kayla?
No, we don't have any questions yet.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And if you guys wanna turn on your cameras so I can see you guys.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.